Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hotseat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners, across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Kamara. Tonight, we want to delve into the roadmap to 2026 general election because on Monday, the 20th of January, the voter display of register will be done, will start by the Electoral Commission, which means now we are more or less into the election mood, full throttle. But what kind of election are we going to have, especially when we do not have the reforms that we had anticipated to have taken place before the elections for 2026? And let me now introduce my guest who's joining me online. I have the Ndorwa East Member of Parliament, the Honorable Wilfred Nwagaba. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Patrick, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Honorable Wilfred. In fact, I've had some people in Ndorwa East call you Rugamba Mazima.
Exactly, that's the nickname they gave me.
We are happy to have the Honorable Rugamba Mazima on the show this evening. I want to take you back, Honorable Wilfred Nwagaba, to 2019, actually, because I remember in 2019 when the Deputy Speaker of Parliament then, Jacob Olanya, paved way for you to take leave of Parliament and draft a private member's bill that was seeking to introduce electoral reforms. What happened then and what really went wrong? And because we don't have the reforms, and I remember you taking leave.
Yeah, I got leave and I had the bill ready for the first time. We had the picture ready for the second time. We were at the time of debate when COVID struck. And we could not garner the 2/3 majority required to pass any clause in the bill we had prepared. Remember that time members were limited to not more than 100%.
Yes.
Because of the constitutional requirement. But we were on second reading, and actually we had gotten a lot of support. But now, of course, that ended when this particular parliament began. We made an attempt to bring it back. Of course, the then Speaker, the late Orania, refused to adopt the area precedent taken by her predecessor. Was her predecessor the rule that what we would only require was bring a motion in the Parliament to resurrect the bill at the stage they were on for continued business. So the Electoral said, no, we must begin afresh. And when I made an attempt to begin afresh, the leader of opposition then sought permission from his party, and I think the party was not keen on us proceeding as we're going to proceed. And since I could not proceed as an individual, but as said out on the general draft of the entire opposition, my hands became tied.
But you know, I just missed one or two things because of the line. But I know COVID caused a lot of trouble for the whole world. There were so many restrictions during COVID, standard operating procedures that meant things were not going to be done like business as usual. But when COVID went and we came back to business as usual, would have expected then that everything that was pending should have actually been, brought back on the table, because we need some of these things as a country.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you. Of course, after COVID, Parliament term had expired, so we began a new term. And when the new term began, we went and saw the Speaker then, the late Honorable Jacob Olanya, to adopt the earlier precedent that had been set by the former Speaker, Right Honorable Rebecca Kabaga, of just requiring us to bring a motion to bring back all the business that had been left pending in the previous Parliament for us to begin from where we had stopped. But the late Speaker ruled otherwise. So we're required to begin afresh, drafting the bill, then seeking leave of Parliament and all that procedure. So of course, I couldn't proceed without the blessing of the leader of opposition. So when I sought advice from the leader of opposition, he too sought advice from his party, and the advice was that we hold on. So we could not proceed I could not proceed on my own because I was representing the interests of Ugandans and the opposition. And of course, proceeding alone without the blessing of the leader of opposition would mean defiance. So my process ended at stillbirth like that.
So let me go back to the issues you had proposed, and some of them are actually very important. Regulating donations among candidates during the time for campaigns, defining the status of civil servants in campaigns. What do you mean? What were you trying to say in regulating donations?
They were very fundamental because one, mine was beginning with the Constitution. And one of the primary articles we were targeting was actually the selection of the members of the commission and their independence, to strengthen their independence and their rights. And of course, matters to do with the regulation of campaign donations and the like would have come in subsidiary legislation after amending the Constitution. And because we could not succeed on amending the Constitution, then we could not succeed on amending the other subsidiary legislation, such as the Presidential Elections Act, Parliamentary Elections Act, Electoral Commission Act, and the like. So literally, all our hopes on having an overhaul in respect of the electoral laws that begin with the Constitution were dashed.
So now, what do you make of because the electoral process is on? We have the voter register begins on Monday. The reforms are not there. Are we really going to have elections worth that name?
Well, I will borrow Right Honorable Mama's word. It will be more of the same. So we can only now use the prevailing laws, and don't expect any difference. It will be more of the same.
So,
however, we don't require upon Uganda to be vigilant in exercising their rights, and we will require upon the state actors, particularly the security forces, to respect the citizens' rights. One, to participate in electoral processes, in holding rallies and consulting the citizens, and also their right and freedom to choose their leaders.
So when you talk about more of the same, Honorable Nwagaba, as a member of parliament, senior member of parliament, then you are telling us that actually we're going to see violence, we're going to see deaths on the streets, because if 2020 is what is anything to go by, then this election is going also to be covered in blood.
Well, if the actors, especially on both sides, both the state and the non-state actors, do not observe and recognize the freedoms of the respective individuals, then expect more of the same or even worse.
So what do we really need to do to have some kind of elections that won't be violent, that will be the integrity of the election can be seen? Just like countries in Africa, like we've seen Ghana, we have seen Botswana, try to have elections that are peaceful and a system that is full of integrity. What do we need to do as a country?
Well, it requires a goodwill from all actors in the entire electoral process, beginning with those in leadership at the top level, from the president up to the ROC1, the entire executive, particularly the security forces, then those who are actually participating as candidates and the like, and the voters themselves want to know that this country belongs to all of us, and two, that there is always a winner and a loser, and three, that we must not only be democratic in the word, but also in practice. By the time it is, can we have such citizens? Can we have leaders and the strictest assassinate recognizing those rights of individuals and respecting them?
So I want to pick your brain on this issue. We know for sure that the NRM has said that their yellow book or their support base contains 18 million voters who have registered and are supporting NRM. And yet the Electoral Commission also says the register of Ugandan registered voters are 18 million. Of course, that is before they are updated. You know, if you have 18 million Yellow Book members and 18 million national register from the Electoral Commission, of course, NUP will say you have 10 million or the other people will say have 6 million. What are we talking about? What do you make of this?
Well, of course, when you talk about the Yellow Book and the Electoral Commission register, I would not want to be driven into talking about the Yellow Book because I don't belong to the Yellow Book. But one thing I know is that a credible register, especially by the Electoral Commission, is one of the basic requirements to have a free and fair election. But I would call upon Ugandans to actively participate in not only having the register credible by checking their names and the rights, but also ensuring that those who are not supposed to be on the register are deleted.
Yeah, but you're talking about credibility, which is a big issue. How do you get credibility when, for sure, the incumbent party has the same, the numerical strength of their support base is equal, actually even slightly more than those who are registered as voters in the National Voters Register? That alone, to start with, may give you a headache come 2026 around, after the elections.
That's why I'm telling you that my interest is on the Electoral Commission register, not the Yellow Book register. But of course, because we hold elections when the NRM is in government and it's the democratic credentials have little to write home about. That's why I told you that we should not expect any much difference other than things being more of the same.
But okay, you're talking about things being more of the same. We're going to have also a big number of young voters, first-time voters, also maybe registering and getting on the national registers and getting ready for casting their vote for the first time. But we have seen in 2024, the Gen Z, the Generation Z, have been a little bit different from the millennials and other people and Generation X and the older people. Do you expect that things are going to be the same? Because it appears young people now are more active, are more demanding, are more straightforward, and probably cannot be hoodwinked.
Well, if the younger people answer to the call of registering themselves as voters and actually participate in voting, and not only participate in voting, but ensure that they guard the vote they have cast. And under the hope that the current commission will for once respect the people's will, then there could be a difference. But if what has been happening in the previous elections again happens, the younger people's participation notwithstanding may not mean much.
So I'm sure it's not yet time for campaigns, but whoever has an interest, especially you who are incumbents, you have been meeting the people, going into your constituencies for different reasons, but you can also gauge that what kind of population are you likely to meet this time around?
Well, that's the truth of the matter is, yes, the number of younger people is of course higher than the number of older people. So expect the demographics to have substantially changed. But it will still depend on how these younger people look at politics generally, and whether their interests are being served by the respective candidates and political parties. But by and large, there is a tendency of voters to either make a complete shift or to maintain the status quo. So it's hard to tell as of now.
In most cases, we see new faces really coming up in the elections. The old ones are totally gone. And I don't know why is it that, do you expect to be a higher number of attrition rate in 2026 general election?
Well, the attrition rate has been ever since I joined the parliament. We will always have attrition rates of not below 60%. Don't expect any change in this time. But so that isn't a fundamental factor, because the fundamental factor is actually on the chief executive office, because that is a chief that controls each and everything, including how the respective organs that are voted, be it parliament, be it local government, the way they conduct their affairs.
So tell me, if people are going to, make some kind of appraisal of the parliament where you sit right now, the one that is term is coming to an end, as a general, not as an individual, as the parliament, what do you think you, as an institution, this time around you have been able to achieve for Uganda that you won't have a lot of trouble when you are facing the people who are going to hire you again?
Well, that's a very difficult one, Kamara, because you are asking me to assess the parliament where you sit as a member.
But because you have done on the bills, you have worked on what defended the rights, you could at least say, pull out a few things, say collectively we have achieved. Because I remember many people always point us to the parliament, the sixth parliament, as having been very vibrant, and some other parliament. How about this? I think this is the 11th.
Well, of course, this one has largely been affected by the numbers. The numbers being quite high. But one thing I know, this particular parliament, you cannot blame it for sitting on work. Whatever work has been brought by the executive has been handled as fast as possible. Even some of the private members' businesses that have been brought have been handled as quickly as possible. The rest remains by the public to judge us whether we are delivering for them or not.
Let me take you back to an idea that you're very passionate about, and that's, of course, it's on electoral reforms. Considering the bottlenecks we have made, you as Honorable Nwagaba Rugamba Mazima, what is the plan now that we are just less than a year to another election? You have totally given up?
I can tell you as a fact that it would be difficult now for a private member to bring bills for electoral reforms with all the procedures of obtaining refund rights and succeed. The total order for a private member to do. But if the government was interested in anything to do with electoral reform, it would be one to initiate now the reforms, bring them and have them passed as fast as possible. But as a private member, the procedures are so stringent. Obtaining the certificate of financial implication, you can hardly get it. Getting a certificate which the minister issues, if he doesn't, you have to wait for 60 days, those are 2 times. So for the private member, it would be a total order. So if we have anything to do with the electoral reform, and this remaining time can only be if the government itself brings them.
There was also another, proposal. I think it came from the Buikwe North Member of Parliament, the Honorable Dr. Lulume. Actually, even suggested that there should be some kind of a transition committee, for the procedure for the assumption of the office of the president by the president-elect.
That would have been, it's a very good piece of legislation, but you can hardly bring it in at a time when some believe he must be ruled until he dies. To talk of transition from who to who.
But did you, as members of parliament, especially in the opposition, when you have the President General of the Democratic Party, a lawyer himself, a man who has been very forceful on the matters of constitutionalism and the reforms, take up the position of Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, and also propose that he was going to bring in reforms? Probably that should have breathed in a sigh of relief, but it looks like it did not. And I'm sure as colleagues in the opposition, you must be disappointed in that office that is being held by one of yours.
Well, of course, you will have to excuse him. Is now governed by collective responsibility. He exercises that position as a minister on behalf of the appointing authority. So if the appointing authority is not interested, there is no way the Honorable Mao on his own can bring electoral reforms, because he can only bring what cabinet has sanctioned him to bring. So you will have to sympathize with him either way.
I want to thank you so much, Honorable Nwagaba, for the time you have given us on the hot seat on KFM. And before I just let you go, probably what is going to be your parting shot?
Well, one, to thank you, Patrick, and thank KFM, and to request you to continue sensitizing Ugandans, especially on their civic rights and obligations. Let all of us participate in electoral processes. You never know, we could end up coming up with a fundamental change.
Ndorwa East MP, Honorable Wilfred Nwagaba Rugamba Mazima, thank you so much for giving us your time. We're going to take a break on the hot seat. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the hot seat. My name is Patrick Amara, and tonight we are looking at the general elections and the roadmap that is out. 2026 election is so near, because this year, 2025, is going to be a campaign year. Just the day after, a few days from now, we shall be seeing the Electoral Commission, Independent Electoral Commission, displaying the voters' register. And that means we are getting to the election mood full throttle. And the election is coming without the electoral reforms that had been proposed. There are many people who had proposed reforms, but the reforms have not happened. So what does that mean? Another person joining us online is somebody who was also interested so much in reforms. He had proposed some reforms, and that is the Member of Parliament representing Buikwe North, the Honorable Dr. Lulume Bayiga. Dr. Lulume Bayiga is joining me online. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good evening, Kamara.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you too.
So now, when it comes on Monday, even in Buikwe, which is your constituency, there's going to be the voters register, people checking their names, and maybe new ones coming on trying to also to get on the register. But sadly, this is happening minus the reforms. What do you make of that?
Yeah, there is a lot of impunity. This is the best example of impunity. And the best example to express President Museveni's other name, Ibu Haburwa. He has never wanted to have any kind of reform, especially when he must participate as a candidate in an election, because he thinks that any reform would be brought about to disadvantage him or to advantage his opponent, and therefore he usually would like to have status quo. And the most unfortunate thing is that his government should have yielded to pressure from those who think it is an imperative to change government or to have chance of changing government democratically. The most unfortunate thing, which is very scandalous, is that there is no any pressure to this government worth writing home about. Most of those who should have brought the these kind of amendments, these kind of proposals to make things better are decimated. They are atomized, and they are engaged in fighting one another, and less time is given to concentrating on nation building through bringing proposals that can make our lives better through the political system. So even when it doesn't make any proposal as government, even if government doesn't bring any proposal, we are on a very slippery ground as the opposition, who should bring different views to make things better. We are so divided. We are preoccupied with the less important things, quarrels, unending squabbles. So President Museveni will not be blamed for leading us that way if at all we continue decimating ourselves.
You know, that's what I wanted to point out, because in your earlier initial submission, you seem to have put the blame more or less squarely on the president. And yet we also know that you have colleagues in that house, almost 600 of them, who have been sent by the people in the constituency to be able to legislate for the people. So if they are unable to pick out an issue and follow it and debate it, really, that cannot be a blame on the executive, can it?
Oh, you are right. You are right. We should have put our acts together if we minded to. But we are learning from time to time. And what we are learning is that there is one person who has been orchestrating most of these divisions. The opposition is divided simply because of one man sitting in State House. And he is the master of this game of dividing the opposition and creating unnecessary squabbles so that people get preoccupied in fighting unending and the unnecessary wars amongst themselves as is cruising above sea level.
Yes. What will it take for a member of parliament to understand that your bosses, it's not the caucus of a party? Your bosses is not a parliamentary regional grouping. Your bosses are the people, for example, in your case, the people of Wikwe, who voted into you into power. You're not voted into a power by a caucus. You're not legislating for a caucus. You are legislating because you have been sent by the people of Wikwe. Is that too hard to understand?
And it's not too hard to understand. But what is also what we also need to understand is a messy system through which one must penetrate in order to make an idea come to fruition. Nobody can work in isolation. You could be independent, but you can never work as an isolated entity. Even when you have a party you belong to, yes, your constituency elects you, the individual, and you may even act independent of the party. But supposing you act within the ambit of the party, you may find it difficult to have an idea sailed through. You remember what Lumo had a suggestion which had been made by Honorable Lumo Richard from Mitiana South. He had wanted to make certain proposals, but he even failed within his party to ensure that they sail through. So the process of ensuring that an idea gets support is very messy, and it requires meticulous undertaking, a lot of time and financial resources to ensure that people are convinced, people are conscientized about an idea, people pick it up, and people are willing to support it. Let alone the processes of having that idea graduate to the policy-making agenda in Parliament, where you can win a chance of going to the order paper to have it discussed. But before even that is done, the caucus of NRM, which usually doesn't want any kind of reform, will sit and discuss whether this should go to the order paper or not, and it can be killed. It can be nipped in the nipped. That is how these systems become difficult to understand, and it is very difficult to blame people for not doing certain things in a time, yet the system is not so as obvious as somebody can think. It can't be as obvious as you may think in order to have the idea see the light of the way.
Well, for the people listening to you right now on KFM, probably it would be good to get to know the ideas that you had. For you, what really stands out in the propositions you are making, and perhaps you feel you're at pain that we're going into another general election without some of these propositions considered?
Indeed. As I told you when I came to KFM the other time, I told you that I had already polished up the presidential transition bill, which I had authored in 2014, and which had caught dust. Then I removed the dust from it, made necessary consultation on one-to-one, man-to-man basis of those people who I thought could cross-pollinate it, and indeed it happened. The next process is to hand it over to the system within Parliament, so that our legal experts can cross-pollinate it and draft it, hand it back to me, and then I get to the other people to ask for permission, to be granted permission to process it. And it has been there for the last 4 months, and I know people are still finding it difficult to have it to come to the light of day, because they think when you talk about transition, you're talking about a transition from President Museveni to anybody else, and it can be difficult to explain if at all somebody has an input which can make it to hasten the process of having it done. Yes. So I wouldn't like to be talking about the internal communications that we have with people we speak to, because they want to protect their jobs too. And that is how they can be frustrated in order to bring ideas that can help our nation on the one hand, and also helping us who want to ensure that these ideas come to the light of the day. These things have become increasingly difficult under the system we are working under.
Now, so what kind of general election do you anticipate to Electoral to have? I'm asking you this because you are a man with a wealth of experience of Ugandan politics, and we have an incumbent who will be seeking re-election, I suppose, that is stretching his tenure of power to 45 years. What kind of election are we likely to have?
This is going to be the most unfortunate election period, because it looks like the opposition has given President Museveni a blank check, and it is very easy to believe that almost all the opposition entities belong to President Museveni, or they are governmental opposition political parties. So they simply occupy space in a name, but not indeed interested in wrestling power out of President Museveni. That is what we can see that is happening. All the outfits that you see, somehow do not even have the wit of speaking to each other. This is the most unfortunate year, the most unfortunate season that I have ever lived under. Because previously you would see various actors at least coming together, kind of seeking to work with one another to forge a common front. This time round, I cannot see it happen, because all political parties are breaking up left, right, and center, and the new formations are forming left, right, and center, and those formations don't seem to be working for a convergence at all. I think in future, such formations will be working in convergence with Museveni himself. No more pretense, I can believe.
All right. All right. Honorable Michael Lulume Bayiga, Dr. Michael Lulume Bayiga, Member of Parliament from Wikwe South. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight, joining me online, is the Wikwe South Member of Parliament, Honorable Dr. Michael Lulume. And let me now shed a light into the Democratic Party, the party that you subscribe to, the party you're so passionate about, but the party also where many of you don't agree. The Democratic Party, they have so many unresolved leadership issues, especially you and the number of DP MPs are still opposed to the leadership of Honorable Norbert Mao. Another section of members of DP are moving on. It must be very difficult to be a member of the Democratic Party right now, to be on that moving bandwagon when there are so many squabbles.
It is. There has never been a time to live as difficult as it is to live in the Democratic Party today. It must be strong-hearted to belong to the Democratic Party, where the state is occupying its most important position, because Mao has been the state but masquerading, but now he's part of the system that is destroying and part of the system that doesn't want opposition, is part of the system that is increasingly becoming intolerant to political opposition. He's part of it, and yet he's still occupying the most important position in our party, and that's the most unfortunate thing. The only hope that we had is the courts of law, together with the cases that we have already argued, the cases that have already been determined, such as that one which was ruled by Justice Philip Odoki, to the effect that Norbert Mao had been elected unconstitutionally and in contravention of the party's constitution, and which he has, without missing word, been contemptuous of those court orders. And the court which is supposed to enforce those orders has delayed or ostensibly denied us chance to have Justice Philip Odoki's ruling see the light of day. For the court to accept content of court orders to continue to persist despite those orders having been given about 2 years ago, then you can see how our system has degenerated. Then the other one, the case that we, members of parliament, lodged in the Constitutional Court. We have already made submissions, and those submissions have been there for the last 4 months, and nothing is happening as yet. Simply because Norbert Mao is a justice minister, maybe. So somebody would think that the judiciary should be independent of the state, of the executive. But to have, simply because you have Norbert Mao as the justice minister, and then the whole system is intimidated to do what they are supposed to do within their mandate, that is degeneration of the worst kind. So that aside, we still have chance to remove Mao, and that is where our faith is, because all the members of the Democratic Party would like to throw him out, let him go and participate in an election, in an internal election in the NRM, and to not to disturb our party. He can become speaker as he has always wanted to be, but he can only do that when he's a candidate of NRM, so that if at all Museveni wins, he can come and then position himself as Speaker of Parliament.
But you know, Dr. Lunume, with all respect, you say all the things you are saying, but you also know that at one point you are interested in the position of the President General of the Democratic Party. So this is your political adversary. We are not expecting you to be saying anything good about him. But you'll also face it. There are some people in the Democratic Party who still subscribe that party and recognize the Honorable Norbert Mao as the President General of the party.
Yeah, it is their. They have the right to express their conscience. It is their freedom. But there has never been circumstances under which one person crosses from one party and goes to participate in the internal affairs of another party, participates at a level of a minister, takes an oath of service, and then you expect them to be leading a political party or an opposition. It can't happen. It just can't happen. It is like seeing a duck. It has a bill. It's like a duck, and then you call it a rabbit. It's still right to call it a rabbit, but it will continue to be a duck if it's a duck.
So now what happens? Because we know it that Norbert Mao, the Honorable Norbert Mao, has even called for a National Executive Committee meeting. And if it convenes, before we know it, you have even other bigger meetings, and then the Democratic Party will be moving on, despite of the fact that you think Mao moved away.
When did he call another National Executive Committee meeting? The report in which we submitted about contempt of court order, it was expressly clear that no meeting shall be called by people who were declared illegally elected. And there has never been any other formal meeting. But they can go on a press conference where there are pressmen and tell them that we are calling for a meeting, but not really to issue notices of a formal meeting of the National Executive Committee. It doesn't happen.
So now who is the president of the Democratic Party?
They can continue even calling themselves presidents of the Democratic Party. They can continue their pressers simply because they have state protection. But as long as we are still members of the Democratic Party, we shall use the space which shall be available under the Political Parties and Organizations Act and under the Constitution of Uganda in order to make a formidable fight to safeguard our party from the claws of government through Norbert Mao Siranda and their proteges.
Okay, let me before we conclude, let me ask about your views about the wider political groupings we see today, like now the new Democratic Alliance under the Honorable Matthias Mpuga. What do you make of that?
Yeah, some of these formations are necessary spaces. People are looking for spaces to participate. They are frustrated within their own parties, and they may see no value in fighting from within, increasing the tenacity of the NRM within the population. You see, when people see us quarreling among us ourselves, then they get disempowered. They get frustrated too. And they think that we are worth nothing. Other than continuing to fight from a party that you have never formed, you are better off forming a new platform, a platform which can help you to articulate your issues without impedance from people who think that because they formed a party and you are joining it, you are less important than any other. So they are right, let them make those formations. But they must know that the most important thing, yes, you can get a platform, but you must create another platform where we are all going to speak to one another. That is the unity in diversity that had been created for us by none other than the late Paul Kawanga Semogere, whose funeral right ceremony is going to be there from tomorrow to Saturday. So, for me, that is what I want to tell them, that yes, create those platforms. You participate, but let us know that it is imperative to ensure that we should have a platform on which we shall be speaking to each other. And then when we speak to each other, we establish a common front that is going to liberate this country once and for all, one time.
All right, Honorable Dr. Michael Ulume Baiga, Member of Parliament representing Buikwe South, I want to thank you so much for the time you've given us. I want to thank you for your submission, and we wish you the best. I'm sure as you go back to ask the people of Buikwe to hire you again here on the hot seat, we wish you luck.
Thank you very much for the time that you have given me, Patrick Kamara. I'm so delighted to have participated on this platform, expressing my frustration, but also the will to continue to fight on for what I believe is rightfully mine, and that is that is what I have exactly done. May God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Ulume Baiga there. And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hot Seat. Good night, and God bless you.